In 33 years of practice, Dr. William Carter has seen patients spend thousands of dollars managing blood sugar, visceral fat, and insulin resistance, medications, supplements, special diets. And yet, one of the most clinically supported tools for all three of those conditions costs less than $1 and is already sitting in most people's kitchen cabinets right now. Here is the problem. There are two very different forms of this ingredient, and research shows that most people are using the one that works significantly less effectively for metabolism, sometimes almost not at all. If you are over 60 and you are tired of fighting blood sugar spikes, stubborn belly fat, or feeling like your metabolism has completely stalled, stay with us. Because by the end of this conversation, you will know exactly what to change and why it matters more than most doctors ever explain. Welcome to the Stronger Seniors podcast. I am Dr. Daniel Brooks. And with me today is Dr. William Carter, a physician with 33 years dedicated to helping older adults take back control of their metabolic health. Dr. Carter, I think our listeners are going to find what you are about to share genuinely surprising.
Daniel, I have to say, this is one of those topics where the science has moved well ahead of what most people have heard. And once you understand the mechanism, you will never look at this ingredient the same way again. So let us get into it.
Dr. Carter, millions of Americans use ginger every single day, yet most have no idea there is a version that is dramatically more powerful for metabolism. What is the difference that almost nobody talks about?
The difference comes down to chemistry, Daniel. Fresh ginger is dominated by compounds called gingerols. They are beneficial, no question. But when ginger is dried using heat around 150 degrees Celsius for approximately 6 hours, something remarkable happens at the molecular level. The gingerols lose a water molecule under thermal stress and convert into an entirely different family of compounds called shogaols. And shogaols consistently outperform gingerols in anti-inflammatory activity, antioxidant capacity, and most importantly, for what we are discussing today, their ability to activate a critical metabolic receptor. A 2018 study published in the journal Molecules confirmed this transformation and identified the precise temperature window where shogol concentration peaks. Go too far past 180 degrees, and those compounds actually begin breaking down. So there is a narrow sweet spot. And here's the part that genuinely surprises most of my patients.
Dr. Carter, you mentioned there is one form of ginger sitting in most kitchen cabinets right now that lands perfectly inside that sweet spot. Which one is it? And should I feel embarrassed that I have been using the wrong one for years?
Daniel, you are in good company. I tell my patients all the time, do not feel bad, feel informed. That form is simply dried ginger powder, the inexpensive kind available at any grocery store. Because commercial drying processes happen to fall right within that optimal temperature range. So the cheap powder on your spice shelf is actually the metabolically superior choice for blood sugar and fat loss. Now this is where it gets even more interesting, because those shogols do something inside the body that most people have genuinely never heard about.
Dr. Carter, you mentioned shogols do something inside the body most people have never heard about. What does the actual clinical data show about ginger and blood sugar control?
The data is genuinely impressive, Daniel. A meta-analysis published in Complementary Therapies in Medicine analyzed 10 separate randomized controlled trials and found that dried ginger reduced fasting blood glucose by nearly 18.8 milligrams per deciliter. To put that in perspective, results like that sit in the same territory as certain pharmaceutical interventions for insulin resistance. And HbA1c, the marker that reflects your average blood sugar over 3 months, also dropped significantly across those trials.
That is remarkable. But Dr. Carter, you mentioned there are actually 3 completely separate mechanisms working simultaneously inside the body. Most people assume ginger just does one thing. What is the first mechanism that most doctors never explain?
The first one is AMPK activation. Think of AMPK as a master key that unlocks the cell door for glucose, completely independent of insulin. Ginger compounds activate this pathway in both muscle tissue and the liver, essentially mimicking the action of metformin, one of the most prescribed diabetes medications in the world. Without the prescription and without the side effects. Now, that alone would be enough to get excited about. But there are 2 more mechanisms working on top of that.
Dr. Carter, you said there is a second mechanism involving digestion that actually stops blood sugar from spiking after meals. For someone over 60 who loves their pasta or bread, how significant is this one really?
For pasta lovers, this one is very good news. Ginger inhibits two digestive enzymes called alpha-glucosidase and alpha-amylase. These are the enzymes responsible for breaking dietary starch into glucose in the first place. By slowing that process down, ginger essentially blunts the blood sugar spike that normally follows a carbohydrate-heavy meal. And the third mechanism involves the pancreas directly, which is where things get surprisingly fascinating.
Dr. Carter, you just mentioned the pancreas and a receptor called TRPV1. Most people have never heard that word in their lives. Can you explain what it actually does in plain language?
Most people know TRPV1 as the receptor responsible for the burning sensation when you eat something spicy, but that description barely scratches the surface. TRPV1 is actually a sophisticated sensor involved in temperature regulation, energy expenditure, fat metabolism, and insulin secretion dynamics in the pancreatic beta cells. A study published in the British Journal of Pharmacology found that showgales bind to this receptor significantly more tightly than gingerols do because of their longer molecular structure. That stronger binding triggers adrenaline secretion and thermogenic signaling, meaning the body begins burning fat as heat, even at rest. And a study in nutritional neuroscience confirmed that showgales were consistently more potent than gingerols in driving this entire cascade.
Dr. Carter, I have to ask about something that genuinely surprised me when I read the research. You mentioned there is one specific showgale compound that triggers fat burning without any spicy sensation whatsoever. For people over 60 who cannot tolerate the heat of fresh ginger, is this actually real?
It is completely real, Daniel. The compound is called 10-showgale, and it achieves full thermogenic activation through TRPV1 without producing any pungent sensation at all. I actually had a patient, Margaret, 76 years old, retired school teacher from Columbus, Ohio. She had struggled with insulin resistance for years and could not tolerate fresh ginger because of the intensity. We switched her to dried ginger powder, 1 to 2 grams daily before meals. After 9 weeks, her fasting glucose had dropped noticeably, her energy had improved, and she told me her waistband felt looser for the first time in years. She laughed and said, "Dr. Carter, who knew the answer was hiding in my spice cabinet the whole time?" And that brings us to something important that most people completely miss about fresh ginger.
Dr. Carter, after everything you have said about dried ginger powder, I have to ask the question everyone is probably thinking right now. Does fresh ginger have any value left at all, or should we just throw it out?
Fresh ginger is absolutely not useless, Daniel. And this is the part that surprises even people who have been following nutrition research closely. A study published in Food Frontiers found that a compound called 6-gingerol, which is dominant in fresh ginger and largely absent in dried powder, drives something called fat browning. This is the conversion of white adipose tissue, the kind that stores energy and accumulates around the abdomen, into metabolically active beige fat. Beige fat actually burns calories as heat rather than storing them. It increases mitochondrial density and uncouples energy from fat oxidation. So fresh ginger works through an entirely different pathway than dried. Think of dried ginger powder as your immediate blood sugar and fat-burning tool, and fresh ginger as your long-term metabolic renovation project. They are not competitors. They are partners.
Dr. Carter, you mentioned chronic inflammation may be quietly undermining all of these benefits in people over 60. What is the hidden connection that most people never hear about?
That connection is the piece that ties everything together, Daniel. And once you hear it, you will understand why ginger is genuinely one of the most complete metabolic tools in existence. But here is what nobody tells you about how inflammation and blood sugar are actually locked in a destructive loop inside the body.
Dr. Carter, you just described inflammation and blood sugar as being locked in a destructive loop. For someone over 60 who deals with both issues, why does breaking that loop matter so much?
Because chronic inflammation directly damages insulin signaling at the cellular level, Daniel. When inflammation persists, cells become less responsive to insulin, which worsens blood sugar, which in turn drives more inflammation. It is a cycle that feeds itself. A review published in the International Journal of Preventive Medicine identified two parallel mechanisms through which ginger interrupts this cycle. The first is enzyme inhibition, where gingerols and shogols suppress lipoxygenase and prostaglandin synthase, the chemical mediators driving pain, swelling, and systemic inflammation. But the second mechanism is far more upstream and far more powerful.
Dr. Carter, you mentioned ginger can actually influence inflammation at the gene level itself. That sounds almost too powerful for a spice that costs less than $1. Is that claim actually supported by solid science?
Completely supported. The mechanism involves a nuclear transcription factor called NF-κB, which functions as the master switch that turns inflammation on at the level of gene expression. Ginger compounds suppress NF-κB activity, meaning they are not just reducing inflammation downstream. They are shutting off the signal that instructs your genes to produce inflammation in the first place. And here is what makes this so relevant for blood sugar specifically. Chronic inflammation impairs insulin receptor sensitivity directly. So by controlling inflammation at the gene level, ginger is simultaneously reinforcing every blood sugar benefit we have already discussed. Remember that TRPV1 receptor from earlier? It also modulates inflammatory signaling. Everything circles back.
Dr. Carter, after everything we have covered today, what does the practical protocol actually look like for someone over 60 who wants to start using ginger correctly, starting tonight?
Keep it simple and consistent, Daniel. For blood sugar and metabolic benefits, 1 to 3 grams of dried ginger powder daily is the dosage range supported by the clinical trials we discussed. Take it in a fasted state in the morning or before a carbohydrate-heavy meal, because that is when the alpha-glucosidase inhibition matters most. And because shogols are lipophilic compounds, meaning they are attracted to fat, pairing your ginger powder with a small amount of healthy fat like olive oil significantly improves absorption and thermogenic effect. For fresh ginger, use it alongside higher protein meals to support fat browning over the long term. Commit to at least 8 weeks consistently. The trials showing the strongest results all ran for 8 weeks or longer. And always discuss any changes with your physician, particularly if you are on blood sugar medications, because ginger is genuinely active and dosing matters.
Dr. Carter, is there one final thought you would leave with our listeners today? Something they can carry with them beyond just the protocol?
Yes. After 33 years of practice, the patients who thrive after 60 are not the ones with the most complicated health plans. They are the ones who make small, consistent, informed choices every single day. Your metabolism after 60 is not broken. It simply responds to different signals than it did at 40. And sometimes, the most powerful signal comes in a jar that costs less than $1. Start there. Be consistent. And trust what your body can still do when you give it the right tools.
That is a wonderful place to end. If today's conversation gave you something genuinely useful, please give this episode a like and drop a comment below telling us where you are watching from. We love hearing from our community all across the country. And if you want to make sure you never miss a conversation like this one, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you are always the first to know. We are honored to be part of your health journey. This channel is for educational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional medical advice. Always consult your healthcare provider before making health-related decisions. We will see you in the next episode.